Okay, now we're recording. So for question 1, it says, um, which of the described life choices, dropout, expert, creator, late bloomer, do you think is best aligned with each of the following gifted adult TV characters? Um, for Sheldon Cooper, I said creator because he's extremely smart within his field as well as with other subjects, but he's on a mission to prove theories and find new evidence that might prove existing theories false. Um, and I feel like he is just pushing towards finding new things and creating new things. Um, I said Gregory House, I felt was dropout because from the clips in the video, I got the impression that while he is a genius within his field of work, he's not happy nor feels the need to carry on with his current field or life itself, really, through the drugs and overdoses he was trying to do. Um, for Walter White, I said expert. Um, this was the character that I was least familiar with, but from what I gather, he seems to know what he's talking about with little to no information prior to making assumptions. Um, and then for Monk, I said he was the late bloomer because from the clip, I felt he didn't really grasp all common understandings and is still on the track of learning ideas and concepts that we learned at an earlier age than what he was.
Okay. I thought Sheldon Cooper was he was somewhat of a late bloomer socially, as it seemed like he was learning some of his social skills from his friends on the show. But I'd say intelligence-wise, he was an expert because he's very talented and knows a lot about the field that he's in technology. Gregory House, I wasn't very familiar with, but from what I understand, I would say that he could be somewhat of an expert due to what he does. I believe in the medical field, he's pretty talented from what I've come to understand. Walter White, again, I mean, I'd say he's an expert because he knows a lot about science. He had a master's in, I believe it was chemistry, and then he went on to make the methamphetamine that, defined the whole show. And then you have Adrian Monk, who, I mean, if you watch the clip where he rearranged the keyboard, it may have seemed odd to everyone, but to him it just seemed normal, just for everything to be orderly. So again, you could say he's maybe more of a creator, more of an innovator in that sense, but I guess that depends how you interpret him.
Yeah, for Sheldon Cooper, I said expert. Like you guys said, he was always developing new ideas and he was really smart in his field. Gregory House, I said expert as well. Matt said he was in the medical field, so obviously he has to be pretty talented, and he was good at what he did. Walter White, I said he was an expert as well. And Adrian Monk, I said he was a late bloomer. I agreed with Allie on that one just because he was still learning certain topics like Allie had mentioned. So I felt that he was more of the late bloomer.
I said that Sheldon Cooper was like a kind of mix between expert and creator just because it's like from knowing the show, like he does have the tendency to like outshine a lot of the other characters, but he also still like is in that like creator mentality, I guess, because it's like he's always trying to improve upon like all his different ideas and stuff. Um, House, I said that he was a dropout because from what I remember from the show, he like I think he either started like doing stuff for the medical field and then like quit and came back because like he felt like a call or something. So it kind of feels more dropout to me. Walter White, definitely the late bloomer in my opinion, because he has like this amazing intellect and he knows how to use it and all, but he kind of started using it towards things such as like being a chemistry professor for like a high school and not like necessarily going directly into like the field of like chemistry stuff. I mean, he goes into the field of drugs afterwards, but he ends up, using the gifts that he has about his knowledge for chemistry. And with Monk, I said that he would be an expert because I believe he is an investigator in the show Monk. So he uses like his gift towards, the whole investigation aspect, even if he is very OCD, like highly OCD.
Okay. For number 2, in what specific ways does Sherlock Holmes reinforce some of the points made in the Cracked article about TV writers and smart people? Is he a realistic, gifted adult, and does your opinion change if you know that he was based on a real person? I said definitely the biggest way I saw Sherlock Holmes reinforce some of the points made in the article was his ability to figure out clues that led him towards the answer that was being looked for. It said, I think it related to like medical shows, but when they're sitting there and like someone happens to throw something the wrong way and they insistently like understand what the problem is or how to fix it, I felt not that a hint was directly made in that sense, but he was able to just kind of sit there and automatically figure out who it was, why it happened, what was going on type of thing. I said I don't know whether I believe he is a realistic gifted adult or not, because I feel it is possible that for him to be very good at his job and know enough and have enough experience and knowledge lead him towards the path that he ultimately took. But at the same time, I felt like it was a lot of inferring and stretches that he had to make to get to the answer he got. Sorry. And he didn't really make any wrong assumptions or guesses. But I said knowing that he's based on a real person helps me lean a little bit more towards the idea of it being possible for him to be a realistic gifted adult, but I feel like it's very rare.
Yeah, I pretty much said before I knew he was based on a real person, I would say no, because a lot of it was made up and stretched, like you had said, and I wouldn't really have seen it as realistic because it was like nothing was ever wrong. But then after reading the article based on like him being a real person, I kind of changed my mind, and seeing what he accomplished and how he came about the story, I think it made me more see him as a realistic gifted adult.
I
Yeah.
personally
Okay, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
I personally said like it's somewhat realistic because a lot of like the conclusions that he drew were like pretty like on the nose, and like that always has like some type of like is it really realistic if like someone gets it right away.
Mm-hmm.
But like especially when he was like describing the man who came to him, like his life, and how like, oh, so you were like in the Marines and you did this and that, and like the conclusions that he was drawing though seem pretty legit, because it's like he has this information about the different aspects. So of course it's like, oh well, you have this specific tattoo, so clearly you were in China at some point.
Mm-hmm.
But like because it's like that weird, like he gets it right every time, it does feel unrealistic. But after reading the article, like just seeing the fact that it's based on a real person makes it like help me lean more towards like, well, maybe it's just like that sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, definitely thought it seemed more realistic after reading the fact that it's based on a real person.
Yeah, I agree with that. That at first, I think that I was drawn to think that Sherlock Holmes, the depiction wasn't really too realistic because he seemed a little too perfect. But after reading that article about, I believe it was Dr. Bell, I think his name was, that someone like that did actually exist and exhibit a lot of like insight to what may have linked people to crimes and linked them to certain clues. that I would actually believe that that could be a realistic depiction of someone like that possessing those skills. And I would say he's a realistic, gifted adult. In my opinion, I'd say did change.
Okay. For number 3, apply what you have learned over the last 4 modules to the character of Good Will Hunting. For A, is he aligned with the definition and common characteristics of giftedness? I said he lines up with the characteristics of giftedness or of gifted individuals, such as he's gifted in one subject area, which is math. He's not gifted all around. And he definitely has a hard time getting along with individuals, which has to do with his background and history, but I feel like his mannerisms and his personality also is because of he's gifted and doesn't really know how to interact with others. Or B.
Do I just do one at a time for this one?
Oh yeah, okay, we can do that. That's fine.
For A, I said that some common characteristics of giftedness that aligned with him was, like you said, he was more subject based, so he's really good at math. But we saw he liked to teach himself and be independent. He was kind of a perfectionist with his family and friends, and he was able to cite like exact references from books that he read. Those were just a few like I picked up on.
Yeah, I saw like similar characteristics, like especially with like you guys have been saying, like the single subject of him like knowing intensely. But there's also the fact that he can like kind of teach himself the different subjects, like if he's just like reading some books. And like you saw in the beginning when he was like getting into that argument with that guy who was like making fun of his friends for, you know, not being as smart as he was, how he like tore him to pieces about, oh, well, anyone could read a book like that. Like, stop trying to make yourself look smart. And I also saw like a characteristic, I don't know if it's been like specifically stated, but just the like he has like an arrogance about him, and it can be seen like through that scene and a lot of others where he's just like, well, I know what I'm doing, so it doesn't really matter. I don't care if you don't know how to do this problem or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. I would say that he does align with some of the definitions and common characteristics. I mean, like you said, he is like knowledgeable of his abilities and can be somewhat a little bit arrogant at times, but for the most part he's tried to conceal them, like in the beginning when he was trying to solve that difficult problem and eventually was discovered doing it. So I would say that, you know, in both of those aspects, he does align with those characteristics.
Okay. B. In what ways might he be considered a member of an underrepresented population? Does he have any special advantages considering he is an American white male? I definitely think he could be considered a member of an unrepresented population, in that being his background and history of being abandoned as well as his money problems. And I said I think he may have a bit of an advantage being a white male, but he is not really a successful, well-mannered white male, and which I feel plays a really big factor in that.
Yeah, I said that he would be considered a member of the underrepresented population too, as far as like low socioeconomic status. I don't think he had advantages because he pretty much did grow up with nothing, and he got abused by his dad, which made pretty much every situation for him worse. It mentioned at the beginning that he was in a few foster homes and he got kicked out, which also wouldn't help him in terms of like his giftedness. I feel like he never really had someone to see or push him in any way, like to excel. So yeah.
Yeah, I said the underrepresented population, definitely the socioeconomic, because he wasn't like he was a janitor at a school, and like he had a small apartment. He grew up in a poor neighborhood, And like the advantages, he had a few because it's like they actually paid attention to him because, you know, the writing on the chalkboard and all that, and they gave him like the different psychologists and stuff like that. But other than that, I didn't really see too much of an advantage, but there's like a hint of an advantage. But we also wouldn't know if the situation was different if, say, an African American person were to be in the same position.
Mhm.
Well, let's see. I'd say that in ways he is considered a member of an underrepresented population due to the fact of his like upbringing and his just like place where he lives in general. Like his surroundings are very, you know, not really supportive of or fostering of a high gifted intelligence. And does he have any special advantages considering he's an American white male? I mean, in some ways you could say so. I don't know how much they were represented during the movie, but I think that it's safe to say that there would be.
Thinking back to the movie, I think one of the advantages that he might have had is the fact that it's like when instead of going right to jail, he had the opportunity to just go see a psychologist every week versus like a lot of times they'll just put African American people like direct into jail, even if because like he had a huge anger problem and he was kind of just allowed to like run with it and no one really said anything about it besides like, oh well, he's kind of got a temper on him, but other than that, not really seen.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay. C, what gifted educational strategies and or environments do you think would best benefit Will as a student and why? And I said the biggest thing that stood out for me was letting him, quote unquote, take charge of his learning and education. More so letting him decide what he wants to know, what he wants to focus on. I think that would work best for him because I feel like he needs that control. He needs to be able to say what he wants to do and have that control is what I think would work best, honestly.
I kind of agree with that. Yeah, I agree with that too. But one thing I said, like just really simple, is just like having at least one person who can relate to him and like encourages him and then he can talk to comfortably because I feel like he never had that. Like even growing up, he didn't really have anyone to like be comfortable with to talk to about certain things or anything. I also said that his friends are like so opposite from him that he never gets pushed or challenged by anyone or like can really relate to. Everyone just thinks he's so smart, but he doesn't really like see it and they don't get why. So I feel like if he just had someone that it would like change a lot too.
I feel like the main part of his education that he needs is some type of like free-flowing, non-strict classroom type. Because when you see him like trying to go to these meetings and stuff, he doesn't want to be there. He doesn't care about like a specific time. He wants to do things on his own. Like the current system he had was probably one of the better ones for him where he just learned things in his own time, learned them on his own versus like I don't know if he'd actually be good in a group situation because he might fall into like belittling others and stuff like that because when you saw him talking to like the professor, he didn't seem to actually like feel like he was on the professor's level, and because of that he was just like, whatever, you're stupid, you don't know how to do this problem and I can do it and I hate having to explain it to you. But
Okay. I think as for gifted strategies and environments that would benefit him, I'd say like more of a traditional classroom environment would be beneficial. unlike his like normal surroundings, like just drinking with friends and stuff, as it would, encourage him to help maybe with the supplies he needs or the teaching he needs, help him get support. And I think the like counselors and therapists also helped because of his somewhat troubled mental state, would probably help him as a student as well.
And what social and emotional needs of the gifted are prominent with Will? Does he handle them in a healthy, productive way? Why or why not? I said he has a hard time letting people in, which is said to be because of his history and abandonment, and because of his abusive father. But I think Will being gifted plays a part in that too, which is what makes it more severe. And I don't think he handles it in the most productive way, because instead of finding help and putting trust in people and opening up, he finds a way to get rid of them because they want to help and pushing them away even more.
Yeah, I agree with that. Social and emotionally, he gets angry a lot. He did go to therapy, but I don't think he took it serious enough, and it didn't really end up helping him. Him not fitting in well socially was also very prominent throughout. He was never able to show off his giftedness to people that he hung out with. And I really think that he just needs a social group that's accepting and can relate to him.
Mm-hmm.
I think socially, he had what he needed, like a loyal group of friends, because he didn't necessarily need like gifted people around him. He just needed people who were there for him because of, being emotionally stunted. And like I said, emotionally, he is stunted. Like, he needs some type of outlet for that, while his friends are good for, being loyal individuals. It's not like he can talk to them about like any of his emotional needs. So that's something he didn't really handle well, because a lot of his emotions ended up coming out as like physical violence. He definitely could have like the psychologists and therapists and stuff like that, they seem to like, he just kind of laughed him off until it came to, the main therapist, and then he starts handling things in a healthier way, because he did distance himself before, especially with like his girlfriend. He straight up like told her he didn't love her so that she wouldn't become attached, because he didn't want to see himself become attached to someone.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's what I saw it as.
As for social and emotional needs, I agree what you were saying with his girlfriend, where he didn't want to become too attached, like you said, because he thought that it would just bring himself like pain, because he experienced a lot of pain earlier in life. Like, it was revealed that he was like a victim of child abuse. So I think that a lot of the time, like it was stated, that he prevents things from happening because he believes that it'll prevent future pain. And if he handles them in a healthy and productive way, I mean, it seems not so much, as you could argue like he drinks a lot to, help forget about some of those things. So, that, I guess that could be a valid argument for that. And I mean, socially, I think it kind of varies. Like, he does get help from therapists, and his friends might not be the best influence, but it's shown that they eventually do care for his well-being later in the movie. So, yeah, I'd say that's pretty much it.
Does anybody want to add anything? So then I'm going to stop recording.